Hello everybody. Noswaith dda, good evening. Croeso, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for a public lecture that's going to be given by Dr. Mark Harvey. Mark is a senior lecturer from the University of Auckland, and he's just told me from the Faculty of Arts and Education. He's an artist and social science researcher. His work, amongst other things, focuses on performance art and related choreography. With a PhD in performance practice, Mark spends his time connecting with local communities and raising public awareness of ecological issues, social justice, the environment, and related Maori perspectives. He has presented in many galleries and live arts events and has several awards. Mark's visit to the UK has been hosted by Cardiff University as part of the Rural Wales Local Policy and Innovation Partnership, a £5 million project funded by the UK Research and Innovation. It's aimed at building a wellbeing economy in rural Wales. So Mark has spent the last 3 weeks in Bangor contributing to one aspect of this particular project, which is all about cultural resilience. And he's been telling me just now that he's been making lots of connections between people and communities, including Bethesda Rugby Club, which I think should get a special mention. And he aims to engage and educate with people. In his lecture tonight, Mark will focus on some of his creative arts practices. He will cover topics such as live performance art, activism, ecology, connecting people and communities. He will mention Maori and European notations of public idiocy and look towards a politics of inclusion as well as environmental health and fun. So I think with that as an introduction, Mark, I shall turn over to you to give your lecture.
Sure.
Welcome.
Am I on? Oh, am I? Oh, sorry. Kia ora koutou. Nau mahara mai, piki mahara mai, hoki mai, ki te kōrero tēnei pō. So welcome to this talk. It's not my position to welcome you here, of course, but I want to say thank you, Nia, and everyone that's hosting me, Iviona, Sarah from Cardiff University, Iviona from this university as well, Yola in the corner, he's hiding. If anything goes wrong, I'll call on him. So I'll just introduce myself a little bit in te reo Māori language. Can you all hear me okay? You can understand me? Oh, good. It's horrible to hear my voice. Hopefully not for you, but for me. I'll get used to it. Kia ora koutou. Ka pepeha o tēnei. Ko taranaki te maunga, ko tararu te maunga, ko otaki tawa, no ngati tū te hapu ngaruhine te whanui e hoki. Ko Mākawi Takawinwa. No reira ko Clan Keithaho. Kia ora. So I come from a wide background. You could say most of me biologically is Scottish, and I probably look like that a bit. And a chunk of me, there's Māori, there's even Welsh back there, I'm excited to say. So I finally made it here. I'm very pleased for the first time. And my parents were profoundly deaf, if that does something. I had to play rugby league from 4.5, grew up playing physical contact stuff, and decided I would become eventually a dancer when I was 19 to challenge all the toxic masculinity I grew up with. It didn't really work. The guys I grew up with actually quite enjoyed it. So, oh well, okay. They weren't toxic. They weren't toxic. And then through that I've worked in ecological conservation contexts extensively. I've worked with communities. I've worked as a high school teacher as well in the last century. It's true. What was I teaching? Art, drama, dance, social studies. I also taught conservation, and I trained in media studies. So I've done a whole lot of things. And we've got 2 kids, and yeah, my partner's from the Netherlands, but we live in Auckland, New Zealand, Tamaki Makaurau in the north, and the rainforest. And so, yeah, as Nia, so thanks again, Nia, introduced, I'll talk about more about my kind of arts-based practices and how they engage with certain issues, community, publics, politics, social justice, ecology, environmental stuff. I did give a lecture the other day to the Geography Society about some of our research projects in forest health and how I engage with that stuff through that, but with researchers from a wide range of contexts. And if people would like, I'd be happy to share the PowerPoint later if people come and see me around that. I will mention that a little bit later. So yeah, just in case anyone's come here wanting to look at forest health, I'm sorry. I'll try. Things that I do. This was a particular work I did in 2012, and I was thinking, I grew up in a family where there were union members, quite high up union members. There were some farmers, tradespeople. I come from stonemasons and bricklayers, so it's been an interesting connection with this part of Wales for me. But people would argue. People would argue about politics where I'm from. So, everything was pretty straight up. You knew where you stood and you didn't necessarily agree with each other. And that was how it was. And so I thought, what is it to make a performance where I invite people to argue with me and wrestle with me about politics and climate change? And so we did. I toured the world, and no one ever got hurt. They went as far as they could, and I always lost. So that was called Political Climate Wrestle. I'll show you a snippet of that video. So basically, if I just go back to all this writing, I'm looking at arts as activism, or art as activism. I mean, for me, art means many things. There's not necessarily one medium. I meant to say I also did a PhD in art and art-based design as well. So I kind of just make stuff. I'm not worried about what discipline it is. It's the context that's crucial to me. So, but some people will call what I do as a live art, public performance approach quite often. Socially based, participatory very often. Participation happens in different ways. Again, it depends on the context of where I'm working and who I'm working with. One of my goals is that it's empowering for people. Because you can easily do stuff and it's not empowering. If I wrestled with people and always really tried to win and did, I don't know if that would be empowering, right? Probably not. So lots of people felt like they could wrestle after this. I was very pleased about that. Disarming people with kindness and humour, I think it's also a cultural thing that I come from in different directions. We talk about raising up everyone when we engage with them. Social justice, environmental justice. I mentioned contextual. We might use the word site-situated or place-based, depending on the discipline one works through. So what I'm going to do right now, shall I play a quick video snippet to check you're awake? Is that right? Look at that. Hang on, this could be quite loud. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Roll. Oh, this was made at 2 a.m. by a very drunk editor in Italy. I shouldn't tell you that. It was made for the publication La Repubblica. So, I used to have black hair, by the way. To you, if you feel like it, to argue with me, just politics. Oh, what happened? I just muted it. How did I do that? Yola? Oh, thanks, bro. Anyway. You think all of us do all the time is related to climate change?
No.
You don't agree?
I disagree. I completely disagree.
I disagree that you disagree.
Then I'm confused.
Yeah, see the caravan. We're prepared in case the Maldives goes under the sea.
Okay.
When it does in 50 years' time, right?
Okay.
Because climate change.
Uh-huh.
And you say climate change is good.
Yeah, because I like it when it's warm.
You like it when it's warm?
Yeah.
My rule is, we have a number of rules. But we don't do
Okay.
kicking, punching, scratching, biting. And,
No,
and,
and there's no arguing about that.
there's no arguing about that.
You okay?
I'm okay. Are you okay? Yeah. That was you're very good. I still think you're wrong. So the text that got lost in me pressing the wrong button then was there we go. Was me. There we go. Was me saying, inviting people to argue and wrestle with me, and the guy was going, "Oh man," But interestingly, I had hundreds of people join in, and that was in Venice at the Venice Biennale in 2013, and surprising who would do it. I had people who were in their 90s. I had little kids. Little kids tended to want to just take me out, So that's okay. For me, the engagement. I'm slightly off the camera. Oh, I was on camera. All right, sorry. Well, I don't need to be on the camera. Sorry. For me, it's not it's however people want to engage, and often what happened on the outside of this, like a lot of this project, this stuff, is the conversations with people that isn't planned, and the learning and exchanging that happens. To me, that's really exciting, and it's not recorded per se as a research thing, but it's actually often, I believe, genuine kind of learning and understanding, and I think that's what's often missing in today's context is different people hearing each other and learning to empathise with different positions. And so often my work is like a vehicle towards that in some way. And so there were much more intense discussions and arguments, some constructive arguments that happened in that performance too. But anyway, so something I did in my PhD was I was looking at the idea of playing the fool, because I kept making stuff, even when I was at dance school, that tended to make some people laugh. Not my teenage kids, I have to add. And like humour, I don't know, it's a big thing where I grew up. Maybe it was, growing up around rugby clubs and things like that and things. Just part of who I am, and also culturally, I think it's a Māori thing. Humour's big. It's a big way of engaging with people. Don't worry, you don't have to find what I'm saying funny, and it doesn't have to be funny. But that, it's a difficult one to do as an artist, or to try to do. I actually don't try to go for making people laugh in my work. It kind of, I don't know. For me, it's maybe more a thing about wit or something. Anyway, so I was always told, don't try and make anything funny in your work when I was at art school and stuff, because it'll just fall over. That's what my teenagers tell me all the time when I try to make things funny for them. So some of the literary stuff that influenced me in my PhD, included like the idea of testing, a bit of Friedrich Nietzsche's stuff from the 19th century, his book The Gay Science. He talked about experimentality, doing things just for the discovery, promising things. You may not ever deliver things, but at least promising. You can try. You can only try. And I guess I look at art making, cultural practices. You're never going to ever make everything really perfect. But if you don't try, then what are you going to do? And also playing the fool, allowing yourself to play around, allowing for things to go wrong, as I was implying then, incorporating your sense of personality, who you are, your cultural background, is really important. Endlessly affirming questioning. I mean, that sounds more academic, I suppose, here, but it doesn't mean pulling things apart just because of that. It doesn't mean that all forms of idiocy are necessarily useful. To me, there's boundaries in all this as well. it's more playing the fool rather than trying to pretend that I'm a character that is a buffoon or someone who has, is not as abled and as privileged as I am, that kind of thing. But it's more about just playing, really. And it's not about necessarily subverting and pulling apart institutions. Yeah, cool. So in Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, I'm quite influenced by this terrain more later in my life, though I had a bit of schooling, and my Te Reo Māori is okay, it's all right. I'm not as good as a lot of people back home. We have similar parallel cultural issues here to Welsh contexts in terms of cultural, our cultural renaissance. Through the 1980s, etc., etc. I've had so many conversations with people that have been very, very parallel to what we have back home around a lot of issues around, how we are growing our culture back, trying to repair what was taken away, trying to rebuild, etc., etc. Anyway, so pūrākau are stories of origin that we've managed to hold on. We've never lost, but they differ across the country. Across the iwi and hapu, that's tribes and sub-tribes. I have this saying in Māori these days, ka mua ka muri, looking back in order to move forward. So Māori culture was never static. It never was before Europeans. We didn't not want Europeans to come to Aotearoa. It was very useful. I mean, I'm the result of that, I think. Europeans brought trade and technology, and Māori were developing and growing as a culture before, and still are, even despite colonial damage and trauma and all that. So I think of the pūrākau around Maui the Trickster. You probably heard of Maui. You might have seen the film Maui on TV, the animation, Walt Disney. If you haven't, don't worry. If you have, this is the same guy, but not from there. This is how we see him in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So he was, sometimes mocked as a fool, not taken seriously. He was endlessly experimental. He had a sense of humour around what he did. He was always quite cheeky, not to put other people down. He set the discourse through what he did. It's said that he fished up the North Island, Te Ikau Maui, the fish of Maori, it's called. He tamed the sun so that we have daytime and nighttime. You don't believe me, but it's true. And he did other things like capturing fire so that we could actually light fire. So all these kind of stories every culture's got this sort of stuff. But for me, it's not so much whether it really is true or not. It's more, there's some essence in there that I find interesting, the sense of playing the fool and questioning. And, sometimes if we don't try things from the outside or from this side, then we aren't going to change what we're doing for the better, as I see it. Oh, actually, I don't need to walk back there. So here's some concepts this will be nearly the last list of texts, everyone, so don't worry. There's some concepts from where I'm from that are very important in Māori-based methodologies where we work, whether it be in environmental stuff, social stuff, law, crime, education, art, etc. Manaakitanga, and that's a really important term. It means not just hospitality or generosity, it's also uplifting the mana of others, and mana is about personal integrity, self-worth, spiritual sense of being. It's a very complex term. It's often taken out of context outside of Aotearoa, but when you're working with people, lifting the mana of everyone, and they need to lift the mana of you, being generous, because we don't exist individually, we exist collectively in the Māori world. In European individualism, modernist individualism, going back to whenever it was, 17th, 16th century, etc., that is not a Māori thing. That's come later through colonisation, and so there's a constant tussle against that. Whakahononga, building relationships, connections, in that sense. Whakawhanaungatanga, that's building and maintaining relationships with others, and that also means building building a familiar-based relationship. So, when you sit with people, hang out with people, you get to know them first. You make friends with them. It's not a transaction per se. It's a building of relationships, and actually, so what comes of it, the exchanging that comes from it has more meaning, more valuing. You're raising manaakitanga, and this is all in an ideal world. Kaitiakitanga, custodianship, guardianship, upholding the mana of things. Everything living has its own wide or spiritual sense of being, and so it's upholding that, and not just everything living. I mentioned when I introduced myself, I talked about our maunga, our mountains that we descend from. And in this case, I mentioned Taranaki, which it looks a bit like Mount Fuji on the west coast, and it is volcanic too. And I mentioned the Tararua Mountains as well as some of ours. I also mentioned our rivers, and all of those have wairoa, and we need to protect them and respect them, and things like that. Whatever that might be, it'd be the ecology around it, not desecrating it, not polluting them, etc., etc. Like the idea of putting a rahui on things, control of access for people, if too much of something's been taken away. That we invented that long before Europeans invented conservation parks, just saying. And we're glad Europeans have brought in conservation parks too, because they work harmoniously together. So where I am, it's interesting that some, like Richard Dawkins and Elon Musk, actually, have added into this, have said, Mātauranga Māori knowledge is not science. However, we beg to differ where we're from. Mātauranga Māori just means Māori knowledge. And within that, there is scientific forms of knowledge. Empiricism is a very ancient old thing through Māori knowledge, where we have developed and learned things, and learned by mistakes very often, and things. For instance, I mentioned Rahui, conservation protection zones, as a thing. It's not to say we do perfect science, but if you look at what science is from a Western perspective, right, it's dialectical, right? We learn through empiricism and things like that. So there's a lot of parallels. Yes, we haven't mapped out DNA in Māori knowledge. That's okay, but we're actually able to deal with a lot of conservation issues, like for instance around forest health, through Māori knowledge working with Western science knowledge. So they actually really inform each other. And our where we are, neither is superior, and both can help each other, and actually it does in lots of ways. But there are those who resist that, and who believe that Western science is superior to everything. I'm not going to argue about that at this point. But anyway, why I was telling you that is because how I've been invited through the School of School of
Environmental and Natural Science.
Thank you very much. Just on call. So yeah, and it's a significant thing, thinking about Māori ontologies and Māori knowledge, and it influences my work, often very implicitly, understatedly, in what I'm doing. But it's essential. So, this is a work I did with the very first photo. You might have seen a bunch of people lying on a step in front of a grand 19th century building. That building is actually our steps of our parliament. And amazing, the security guards let us do what we were going to do. This work, Reductive Bodies, 13 years ago, a bunch of curators got me to do something at the New Zealand Festival of Arts. They wanted to get something happening with the current state of affairs where lots of New Zealand government servants were being laid off. And it's happened again with the current government we've got in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But this is 13 years ago, and so what we did is we workshopped a lot with a lot of these people who had just been laid off or were worried about being laid off. And we came up with stuff around the city where we looked at the idea of being useful or useless, but played around it in cheeky ways, but in ways actually that were positive for the community around. We had, just a disclaimer, we had the unions come up to us for the government servants that were being laid off, thanking us for what we were doing, because we weren't operating as a protest action. Now, I talked about art as activism earlier, or had that title. For me, art as activism doesn't have to directly be a protest. It can be stuff that just brings up, gets us aware of stuff. It doesn't have to go front on with how we communicate with people. It can be a way to side up with people, get them involved, or get them aware of this stuff, and it may actually help build education and, awareness. And I'd for me, that's also the same around conservation issues, working with science communication as well. And in this case, we're providing a wind shelter for these government servants, the ones who actually are responsible for purchasing land around the country to build motorways. And we're having this conversation about what they do, and we're trying to understand what they do, and they're trying to understand our perspectives, and some of our group are anti-motorways, as it happens, but we were able to do it in a way that was actually informative and was really nice. No one walked away grumpy. We had we were having a laugh and a giggle here and there. We did other things where we provided sun shelters for the government security guards outside Parliament. We felt the weight of Parliament. That was that first photo you saw. We did other things like provided information to people about a TV channel, government TV channel, documentary channel that was about to be closed down. And so we thought we'd give, there was about a month or two before it was going to be closed down, and we thought it'd be a great opportunity to remind people that those channels existed and how useful they were, as a implicitly sort of suggesting, well, it's really good, maybe we should keep those channels or something, So anyway, this is another one, Christchurch, Aotearoa. You might know of that city in the South Island, and Tawaiponamu, that's the Māori name for the South Island. So they had some serious earthquakes in 2010 and 11. People died. Most of the city is on wetlands, and so a lot of the city got destroyed, demolished in the earthquakes. Another example of town planning that hasn't been thought through. They haven't listened to the old ancient histories, both European and Māori in the area. Māori would never live there, and there's a reason why. There's taniwha, the equivalent of, you might say, dragons in Welsh. What do you say? Drake. That's dragon, isn't it? Oh, yeah, thanks. I'm trying to learn Welsh while I'm here. And taniwha are like serpents, and they're like, they're always somewhere where you shouldn't be. We say, you can't go there, there's a taniwha there. Okay. And so there is there. Anyway, going back to this, so they had the earthquakes, and we sat around with lots of locals who were staying around, and we sat for nights having food and chatting whakawhanaungatanga, manaakitanga. So you met, just in case, those terms are useful here. Building relationships with them, and we said, what do you want? What do you want us to do? We're a bunch of artists. What can we do for you? We're from out of town. And they said, well, we'd really like someone to go around thanking everyone for staying here and appreciating everyone that's here. Okay. So we said, what do we do like a thank you protest? And we go around and thank people. And people don't thank people in protests back home. Protests usually are, don't do this, we don't want this. Yeah, right? They're not usually a nice thing in terms of showing appreciation, right? And there might be in some other contexts these days, but back then that was definitely not the done thing. And so we started these thank you protests with the locals, and they created signs, and some of the young guys that were getting work experience joined in with us. And then suddenly we had like hundreds of school kids turn up out of nowhere with their teachers. Suddenly just joined in and started chanting with us. And, we love New Brighton. That's the name of the thing. And actually we got our best art review I've ever had. Someone on Talkback Radio called up and complained about our work. Said that was, why would they say they love New Brighton? It's a really shit place to live. Excuse my language. Anyway, I thought that was funny. Sometimes media can be useful. Good attention, maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But anyway, in this case, the school, the reason why they turned up was because 3 weeks earlier they had actually been protesting about their schools being closed down, and the government used the pretext of the earthquakes as the pretext, but they had more than enough children to keep the schools open. And it was found like 3 or 4 years later that the government acted in bad faith. It was just trying to do a financial rationale experiment where they got 2 schools, put them together and gave them 2 shifts, a shift each. And it was traumatic for the community, traumatic for the kids, terrible, right? Eventually they opened up another school and rebuilt the whole system again. It took years, but yeah. So the kids joined us, and it was like a moment, it was like a time of catharsis. For like 3 or 4 days, we were going up and down at lunchtime, the whole city strip and the regional strip, or suburban strip, doing these protests. And eventually we took it to the school. We were around the school block, and all the kids joined in and made protest banners. And then after we left that day, apparently all the kids were still doing it around their playground, you know, chanting and stuff. And anyway, I don't know. So yeah, and I guess, yeah, you might think, well, what's the point in all this? For me, it's about actually building value for these people that are there. Before the earthquakes, most of them, unless they knew each other through something, didn't know each other because they have tall fences in that city. And so the neighbours don't know each other. You know, suburban culture has gone wrong there, and it showed for them. So yeah, anyway, this is another one. This is actually near where we live. And that was part of a project, Group Weed Whistle, where we went around the area where we live, pulling out the invasive trees. And invasive species are a big thing in our country. Biosecurity, I'm involved in it big time, and do conservation work outside of artland, and sometimes inland in this case, in artland in this case, sorry. And so that's an Australian western wattle, and they will grow anywhere back home. With climate change things getting warmer, they're growing even more and more. You don't need a male or female tree, they just reproduce. I think they're a problem in Portugal too, or a version of that is. They're a type of acacia tree, I think. So yeah, we were going around just pulling them out along the roads. There's a video that went with us, but it was just, weed vigilantes and just doing it, But we were able to do it as an artwork, but actually we were doing something that needed to happen because no one else was going to do it. And so, yeah, I don't know. This was definitely like mixing my personal conservation, personal hobbies with my art in a way. And, they had a great time. And it's actually really fun to pull one of these trees out with a bunch of people and collect the seeds, just saying. And they haven't grown back as well, I'm pleased. This is another one, Waitakere Drag. Actually, this is a play on words. And the area we're in, the forest we live in, that's some of it there. It's very dark. The sun's not in that area too, but the forest has a darker feel about it. It's actually not called Waitakere. That's a colonial mistake in Māori. And that's like some land developer called the region that. And to me, drag, this is a bit of a drag. Or I was dragging something while I was doing what I was doing, hence the name. So I just dragged this around the area and would have chats with people. What are you doing? Oh, I'm doing this artwork. Oh, yeah, just thinking about kauri trees and how they're being chopped down at the moment. And, oh, okay, yeah, our neighbour's chopping one down. We'd have all these kind of chats that would just happen. There's banter, and so it's not captured here. With people walking by or driving by and stopping, and, even I think a policeman is, oh, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, I'm just doing an artwork. Oh, okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so we like to chat. Anyway, so some of the recent governments, not the last one, but the current one and the one before that, the Tory governments, had approved of chopping down of what we call our most sacred trees in the top of the country, called kauri trees. And they can grow as wide as a car is. In terms of carbon capture, they're the third biggest capturing tree in the world of carbon. And they're a type of conifer. And they take a long time to grow, a really long time to grow to their full size. And even some of my own ancestors were involved in tree chopping on our European sides. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, how ridiculous it is to keep doing this. And so I thought, oh, what if I do something that looks like it, but it's not it? So I got this log of cardboard, and I thought, okay, what if I drag this through the area and see what happens? What's people's responses going to be? Because that's what the loggers used to do. Now you don't see it. It gets chopped down and then taken away in a truck. And so, yeah, it's kind of an awareness building thing without it being too loud and stuff. We have a thing called kauri dieback that is killing off our kauri trees. It's a bit like slippery elm or ash dieback in its own versions. So I was thinking about that as well. It looks like it could be kauri dieback on the log, but it's not. It's cardboard. And I went to the local tribe, the local iwi, and sought their approval to do what I was doing, because that's a big thing where we are. Everywhere in our country, iwi, hapu, tribe, sub-tribe, they have a kind of jurisdiction, a customary jurisdiction, and it's good practice to be in conversation with them if you can. It's hard to at times because they don't have the capacity, but yeah. Luckily, because I'm working that terrain, I've been able to connect a bit with them. Moving on, getting there, everyone, getting there, don't worry. This is called We Can Shift the World Together, and it was at a festival called Performance Arcade. And it was a very, perhaps different to the other ones, where I thought, what if I try and build community over this container? Because the festival was based in these containers, these bluey containers. And I thought, well, why does everyone was doing stuff in the containers, great, often design things and fun-focused things, and, awesome. I'm terrible at doing design and making little things. So what is this? It's a container. Why don't we try and move it? Okay, so I can try to convince people all the time to come and help me move it. And hundreds and hundreds of people for 5 days would try and help me, move this container, and we'd be, we work systems out. Okay, pull, and we'd all, we were convinced we were moving, but actually I had marked it. We did not move it in 5 days. So, but it was more about the action and having fun. But like the wrestling one, hundreds and hundreds of people. I'd work for days and days, but it was kind of about the stuff around it and the conversations and the fun. Another one, oh my God, you're probably wondering what that is. Excuse me, my language. Kikarangi problem solver. Kikarangi means blue, and I know that looks like a jellyfish or a bad 1970s drama class. I was a drama teacher once, so I can vouch for that. Those are my legs, by the way, the white shoes, believe it or not. So in this particular work, it's actually in the same festival a year later. I'd be doing stuff with this material, rolling around. This is my dance training coming out, and then invite people to join in with me and have conversations about what they'd like to improve about the local, about where they are, about the city, about the country, about how we relate, and kind of abstract questions. We get talking about racial politics, around Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is the founding document of our country, which is a partnership between Māori and the Crown. And it's an ongoing living document. It's been abused, and now it's being used often to seek reparations and rebuild relationships. It's very unusual. Usually treaties with Indigenous peoples have been totally treated like rubbish, like often in the Americas. But we've been able to hold on to it, probably because we were good at beating Europeans up. Don't worry, I'm part European. In the 19th century, probably because of the New Zealand Wars, maybe. But whatever the case, maybe because, I like to think it's because Māori are very hospitable and welcoming, and we've been able to, get politicians to listen to us. Anyway, so this is, conversations were crucial. And here we were talking about something quite specific about political parties, and that's a real hot potato where I'm from. But, we were able to do it, and not everyone necessarily agreed, but we were able to have a constructive way of hearing each other. I mean, part of my background has also been in mediation stuff as well, so I bring that in. I bring whatever's appropriate to the context and try to make sure, it's a safe space for everyone, because that's crucial. That's a risk with working with the public, but, we have safety situations so that, and like in those kinds of works, where if someone does something that's not okay or could be abusive, we have someone there who can say, excuse me, you need to, there might be a security guard sometimes in that sort of work. Not what I would like, but sometimes it's needed. And I haven't had any trouble in our country. The only place where I've had trouble, no offence to any Australians, but I've actually had to use a security guard in Australia around a wrestling work. Some drunk Australians really tried to pulverise me and other things, but I won't tell you about that. Anyway, everyone okay? All right? Good. So this one, yes, getting out in the country is what I like. Whakahokia, that means return, to return back in Te Reo Māori. And I've did a project that lasted about 5 years with an iwi called Ngāti Te Kōrehē, who are based in the Horowhenua, not far north of Wellington, in the North Island. And it's a very, very special place. And sometimes things take time. You know, projects don't come straight away. The whakawhanaungatanga relationship building can take a while, especially in Māori spaces, and that's okay. It means a lot of food gets eaten, and I quite like that. Actually, Hannah Smith in the blue overalls there, who was, you could say, the curator and also guide, and she's a really strong woman that does a lot for the tribe, the iwi, in terms of conservation and environmental stuff. She also is an artist and academic too, and has been a mentor for me a lot. So up here on the left, top left, does anyone remember the Brady Bunch from the 1970s? Anyone my age or older? Anyway, it's kind of like the windows. Not trying to play on that, I just thought of that. If you know it, go look it up. Anyway, this here is marram grass, right? You might recognise marram grass. And it's lovely, isn't it? In our country, it's an invasive weed. It was planted often on the sand dunes as a thought, it would hold the sand dunes, but actually what it does is stops the sand dunes from breathing in the way they should back home. They need to breathe, they need to be able to move, and so it's a major, major issue. This iwi is trying to get rid of the marram grass in the area and replace it with native species. And so that's a big part of the project. And so here we are getting rid of it, and in a few months' time we'll replant the area. At the moment, some things will grow, but not much. And what we did is we made compost balls here, and I wanted to make a giant, giant one, but it was just crazy. But so for about 8 or 9 kilometres, which is about 3-4 miles, maybe 5 miles, actually, we basically moved the compost balls. That's only a small snippet of them down the road, and we put them back onto the main highway, say Highway 1, which would be like your M1 or M6 or something through the country, like where all the cars go zooming. So we were giving it back to the colonial institutions and stuff. And this is some of them here. And eventually we made it after a day of kicking them, and it was fun because people of all walks of life, a lot older than me and stuff, and younger, were joining in. And here we are, just starting to pile them up. And those happen to be Māori flags of sovereignty. We've had huge protest campaigns in our country around the current government undermining Māori rights in Te Tiriti. So there's a whole context there at the moment. If you look up in The Guardian, there's a bit of stuff around it, for instance. So we have some big challenges. Anyway, so this is kind of a fun way of kind of doing conservation work and engaging with it without it being directly obvious necessarily. Those flags do frame it whether we like it or not. But we're not trying to make a comment against the government. We didn't put any signs up or anything like that. To me and to many of us in Māori contexts, Māori sovereignty is a positive thing. It's not an anti-government thing. Te Tiriti o Waitangi guarantees Māori sovereignty. Māori never ceded sovereignty in our partnership with the Crown. And so, most people recognise that back home. And actually, once you work out how we can navigate together, being together, we have many examples of that, it's fine. There's unfortunately a lot of populist backlashing going on at the moment. And it's a very small minority, but Trump's rhetoric and whatnot is seeping through. I mentioned Elon Musk earlier as an example around science and discussions around that back home. So so that's my recent project, and this is the last one. You might know that. Sorry about this. I'll get a better photo of me, but at least you don't have to look at my face. Sorry. But thanks to Eviona, Sarah, and Eviona's daughters that were helping, and also Pontio Arts Centre was through. It wasn't organised by Eviona, but it was organised by in support from Pontio. I did a project where I engaged with lots of locals. We've engaged with lots of locals and lots of learning in different ways, and including, we mentioned the Bethesda Rugby Club, and also folks around slate mining and things, and I thought of my own heritage as well, and stonemasons and quarry workers where I come from as well. and as well as coming from this region hundreds of years ago in our family. We thought about what's the origin of this university? How did it form? And you probably know this history, and correct me if I'm wrong, and how workers helped to create it. And so that's really special, and that's something really unique. You don't often get that. Usually universities are created from the top, so to speak, and just put into a community. And so I'm quite, I don't know, maybe it's a celebratory thing. And this, what I did was I scored a whole lot of slate from a lovely local man who's in a choir in Bethesda, Alan Davies, and he said, yeah, I've got some slate for you. And we got talking about, Sarah and I got talking, one of my collaborators got talking with him about what we were doing. He was very interested. He said, look, hey, have you thought of putting some text on here? What about the names of the galleries in each of the quarries, or some of the quarries locally? And so he came up with some, and Sarah helped to look them up, and it was a collective process of coming up with them, and then he put in some other things, symbols that people would workers would carve onto slate, and you all being around here, I'm sure, will know these stories way better than me, so I do apologise if I'm getting any of this wrong. And so what I did is with checking it out with locals and hearing their stories, I thought, okay, I'll give something back to here. I'll carry these up to the old university building, and then we'll display them for a little bit. And so it's a video work as such. Though there was a few people there, it wasn't many people. It was it was more a kind of trial to see what would happen. And this is what we've got. These are just snippets of what we have in it. Me crawling up. It was hard work, but that was part of it. It come from a context of hard work. And there's the slates laid out in front of the gate as a kind of celebration, I suppose. That's a kind of, you could say that's an ongoing work because I still have to edit it. Some of my work I will show on video, and some is just only live. It really depends on the context. And we're hoping to show it somewhere locally as well after this with something. And a really lovely moment. It wasn't intended to be part of the work. Alan sang in Welsh through a big part of the work, and that really made it quite moving and stuff. And there was health and safety was all ticked off, just so everyone knows. One last lot of stuff. Is that okay? Just a nod to what I mentioned at the beginning is my other side of me that I'm an artist, but I'm a researcher. For me, it's all part of the same thing. I don't see it as separate because they kind of thread through each other in what I do. And so I've mentioned here social research and curating. Sometimes I'm curating artists for exhibitions or festivals and things, depending on the context. I did that in this particular. I had a 4-year project that I was a co-lead on with 2 others called Mobilising for Action, and it was around forest health in Aotearoa, around kauri trees and mutaceae species. Very prominent national species in our country, tree species that are both at risk. Kauri dieback I mentioned earlier, and myrtle rust, which you actually can see here, and you can see the dust going up through into the screen there. That's myrtle rust spreading. Major problem for some species, wiping out some species back home. Very at risk. And we did all sorts of things with this. So the projects that we did, overall were transdisciplinary, work with the human dimensions of forest health, I mentioned that, Māori and non-Māori, and sometimes both together, Te Tiriti partnerships, very important as well, because Māori can't do everything to fix things. We also need, and neither can Europeans and other cultures. We need each other in this space. Very, very important back home. Empowering communities, I mentioned that. Providing tools for communities, writing new insights, and working with communities in various ways, providing new understandings to take forward. And Sarah was part of our was part of our project as well, and that's where we met, and that's why I'm here. One of the things that we did was work with schools and work with the arts and scientists and local tribal leaders to create, for the kids to create projects, in response to this stuff. Sometimes it was around science communication. Sometimes it was around developing fun ways to educate folks through games or through videos or making books. Another project that we did that I was involved with was called Taiao Whakatairanga, which I actually led it, but officially. And it was a collaboration with curators, and we curated in 12 Māori artists to engage with these themes and in whatever medium was appropriate for the context. And part of the brief was that they had to give back to who they were working with, the communities they were working with. And that's a very Māori thing. You don't just take, you give. Don't be a hoha, be a koha. That means don't be a taker, be a giver. Koha means to donate, by the way. Hoha, I won't tell you what that means, but you can imagine. Yeah. This is some forest where you've got ramarama, it's got metal rust, that's metal rust there, that's Graham Atkins. One of the projects we developed was to create documentaries that would inform people about the situation in that particular location, about myrtle rust. And that's Graham Atkins, who's done a huge amount in the Rokuma forest on the east coast, and with iwi, Ngāti Porou, and Te Whānau Apanui, amongst others. Those are the iwi or tribes. And there was very little support for their efforts to try and deal with myrtle rust. So really, not much going on in terms of government support. So they were just watching the plants die. And this particular video, we like to think, with a few other things, helped to convince the policymakers and the government ministers at the time to actually fund them getting the resources they need. And so they did. They got millions, and they've been using it well for these species and forest conservation. And this video has been shown all around the place. It's called Mate Tipu Mate Rako, and we did follow-ons with what the community's doing as a collective as well. They created the video, so there was co-design in that particular project. Lots of co-design in this project in different ways. Another one was we got together with an artist called Araha Novak, and she got together with teenagers where she lives and kind of said, hey, there's this concept of myrtle rust. What do you reckon? What can we do with it? How do we talk about it? And they said, oh, I know. Why don't we make a graphic novel? So they made a graphic novel. And that's the cover, front cover. I like the cover because it looks explosive. Anyway, it's been made with, how can you put it, a lot of drama, high drama, and, brainstorming with the teenagers and testing things out. A lot of a conspiracy theory kind of playing with stuff. But then we had scientists in there as well helping to make it. So it's really legitimate in terms of the science, taxonomies and everything like that. And then we also, in there as well, we've got Mātauranga Māori knowledge that helps to inform lots. And it's interesting because the scientists were just so engaged with this. It was so exciting to see, because there was a stereotype back home that scientists would not be engaging with any of this stuff, but we've had the opposite experience. It's been amazing, partly because of how important Māori knowledge has been in there, and these scientists are just lovely people too, of course. Scientists are okay too. And it's interesting because the final part of this is a karakia. And the karakia is a karakia for myrtle rust. A karakia is a blessing, a kind of incantation that you say. And our ancestors would do it for just about everything in any way, and you can spend a lot of time doing karakia. Do it before you eat. I should have done one at the beginning. I'll do one at the end, I promise. So in this case, it's specifically for myrtle rust, and it's travelled the country, this karakia in different ways, and we've even had plant nurseries ask for the karakia and using it when they see myrtle rust. And whether it works or not is not the point. It's a way of engaging and acknowledging, and some people really believe it. That's okay. So it means there's it's a way of kind of like Christians will do prayer. It's not unlike that. It's not of the same, of course. But it's a way of kind of acknowledging sort of the ancestralness and the particularity of these plants and our relationship with them. And, you know, and some people might think, there's no point in that. But to me, as people, if we don't connect with what we are, with our natural surroundings, who are we and what are we? Are we going to make a difference? Is climate change going to keep going the way it is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And whatever tools there is useful. And for me, working through our Indigenous knowledge is important where we are. So yeah. And so we were really proud of that. And we did many, many other things. But that is it. And as I say, he pai ake i te kore, a little is better than none. That's a whakatauki or a proverb. So who made it, I don't know. It goes way back. Like there was one or two others that I didn't read in this. So that's a bit of stuff that I've been doing. And and thank you for your patience. I know I've kind of jumped around a bit at times, but there's a lot. And so, yeah, if you've got any questions, he pātai at all, if you've got any questions, let me know. I'll do a karakia to finish, just a quick one. It's from I think I've shared it with you before. It's from our Parihaka Taranaki Whānui iwi cousins. That's a place in Taranaki, the west of the North Island, where we whakapapa around. Karakia nai nei whakabunta. Urutururu, urutuwihi, uruturutu, urutukai. Tina, homi hui tae ki e. Kia ora. So that basically means from the destruction we grow stuff and we eat them. We eat it, not eat them. We eat what we grow. So it's really, they use it for harvesting, and it's quite a nice one to do before gardening. And in that particular tribal garden, you can only speak Māori, and so it's a way of helping to grow the language and things. So culture is very important part of being there. So yeah, okay, thanks. Any questions, comments, jokes, complaints?
So many thanks, Mark, for that very engaging talk, taking us all the way from Maori knowledge, Maori mana, all the way up to myrtle rust, and building communities by trying to move containers. It's a great idea. So anyone got any questions, please, for Mark? I think there's one here.
A microphone.
Dear, have I got to use the mic? I just wanted to say that's really inspiring. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you.
One of the things that struck me about it was that I don't know how you did all that, in the sense that there's lots of us who all kind of do our thing in our little corner, and it just feels as if you've somehow managed to integrate people across all sorts of communities, and you seem to involve huge numbers of people. So
Wasn't my fault.
just wondered what's the secret.
I don't know. Well, I guess as an auntie says back home, we're in the people business. Like that, she says about Māori, we're in the people business, and my Scottish side are also like that. I don't know, and it's just I don't know. It's just we do what we do, and I haven't planned it necessarily. It just goes where it goes. I haven't planned it. But it's the nature of also working with art sometimes. If, in contemporary conceptual areas, it can be hard because you don't necessarily know what it's going to turn out. But I trust getting to know people and hanging out. And to me, it's always about the people, the context I'm working with. And they, I try to do stuff that people want. I'm trying to, well, I guess you could say we play requests like they do, places, like a DJ or something. I don't know. Don't call me a DJ. But it's like, it's about the community that I'm working with, or the context. What is calling out there? What do they want? And if they don't want it, I won't go there. I won't do it, So yeah. So I didn't show you what's performances that aren't so made with others and things, but I guess maybe it's also coming from theatre and contemporary dance and teaching, where we're working with groups of people all the time. So it's probably that as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Any more questions?
Hello. I wanted to say thank you initially for the talk and the one you gave the Geography Society. And I know that you went to the Botanic Garden recently and had a walk around with the head, Natalie, there. So just hope that you've had a nice time here.
Oh, thank you.
But wanted to ask you about when you've been doing your performance work, is finding inspiration something that comes quite naturally, because so many of those performances were so different to each other, or does that come from a lot of workshopping and consideration, or do you see something and go, yeah, I know it's going to happen?
Sometimes things don't come somewhere, but I think everywhere and every community's got some really interesting stuff going. Every ecological context, every political context, there's interesting stuff. Sometimes it's not always nice, but yeah, so that's an interesting question. My partner says that I'm just scatterbrained. So I don't know, maybe she's right. She just does drawing and gardening in her practice and stuff. She goes, I don't know how I wouldn't do what you're doing, she says to me. And actually one of my teenagers said that to me yesterday too. She said on a text, I shouldn't embarrass her, but she said, you like embarrassing yourself, don't you, Dad? But I guess, it's just something that it just naturally has gone that way to do that, and often I think a big thing around this stuff is hanging out and listening, is trying to listen, and not talking too much. I know I talk too much tonight, but that's really exciting to hear what people have to say and where they're coming from, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. Cool.
So there's another one over there.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Diolch. As someone who works broadly in similar fields, maybe not as integrated as your practice, I know while fully appreciating the process and the need for conversation and, what is not measurable in those exchanges that you're having, I'm curious about the culture and the landscape of perhaps, I'm not an academic myself, so I might be missing the trick, but how are you, any highlights from your research or reporting, or how you are kind of demonstrating the effects of this work as someone who's called to do that quite often in my own work?
That's a good question, because it depends on the context. I mean, I do sometimes do writing and reflect on things through writing sometimes, and just my experiences of what people have done. And we often talk about impacts where we are in academia these days, and that comes in many ways. And for me, sometimes it's just that it's enough that particular group of people, like the iwi, the tribe, Ngāti Te Kore here, have those who participated in this have got something and taken it away, and it's a memory for them, or it might be something that they have that they might want to do with each other in the future, or so sometimes it's just at that level. There's some things I won't share, and in university context, academic context, if I'm even going to write about it and share people's voices, I will only do it with their permission, of course, as an ethical thing. So it's a really interesting question, and for me, I don't usually chat with people in the academic way when I'm doing my stuff. It's just, I did a work that's not there, where I was pushing a van around for hours in Christchurch. It's a long story. I collaborated with a physicist in quantum physics, and we were looking at the rebuilding of Christchurch after the earthquake. This is after the Christchurch. And I was just, pushing a van, and luckily it had someone in it who had the brake off. And people would say, do you want a hand? Oh, yeah, okay. And we just chat. And what do you do? I'm making artwork. Oh, okay. Don't know about that, but this is fun. And we just have it for hours. I don't know. But so even if it's just on that level, yeah.
I'm borrowing that catchphrase.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm making artwork. You get away with everything.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know about that. Well, I wouldn't all try. Yes, maybe, but I wouldn't try the New Zealand customs at the New Zealand airport, at the Auckland airport, and say you're an artist. They tend to go, you're a what? There must be marijuana in your bag. I've had a friend I know a number of artists who've had that problem. So there's a context where I don't suggest using it, but otherwise, yeah. Go.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, sorry. Oh.
Shall I go? Yeah.
Oh.
How do you find engagement with people who don't think similarly to you in terms of I think there's a danger with some events that you're
Yep.
preaching to the converted.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, like my dad. I guess it depends on the context, but it's interesting, the wrestling work, the only people that didn't want to wrestle were men from Belgium. And they wanted to argue about why I was doing what I was doing. Okay, fine. So, all right. You can't, if people don't want to engage or don't want to engage, then you can't make them engage. So they'll have that belief, first of all. If people don't share your belief, I can't change them. I'm not going to try, but maybe around this, they might see something. They might change. I've seen people change their opinions on things once they actually learned about it. And that happens every day, right? We often are influenced by each other. So and there are people who just simply have perspectives that I can't relate to on a kind of safety, ethical level. And that's where I've had to say, actually, this is not okay. Sorry, you can't do this. But if it's at the level of, we just don't agree, that's interesting. And for me, if it's, in my work, usually there needs to be a place for disagreement, because I'm not going to have the answers for everything, of course not. My teenagers will tell you that. It's an interesting one, and it depends on the work. And sometimes it's just doing something fun, and people can just see it, and they don't have to engage, or they I don't have to hear their beliefs. I can see what's going on in their mind, and they see what I'm doing. So normally it hasn't been a big issue. Normally it's been as long as it's been safe, and no one's been disrespected, then it's been actually a positive place for differences of opinion. And like in some of those works where we did group works, we worked with consensus-based decision-making strategies, the one in Parliament, and we made rules at the beginning that if anyone, we only did stuff that we agreed to. We only did stuff as a group that we agreed to. If we really felt uncomfortable, we had a right to express it, and we also had a right to be listened to. And that's everyone. And also, if people wanted to block it because they felt so uncomfortable, they could. And that was actually a good system, because I've worked with that a lot due to different things I've done in my life, and we were able to work with differences of opinion quite well. It wasn't so difficult that no one would want to do anything. If they did, they wouldn't be there. But it meant that we were able to work through some stuff, and often we'd educate each other why we felt that way and all that. So we gave space. And with that particular one, with the government servants being laid off, we'd always work for about 2 or 3 hours every morning in a room in the art gallery, and tried stuff out and worked out stuff there in a safe space, away from the public watching. Because the moment you've got public watching, people watching, that that changes everything and can make people more vulnerable, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting one. How to structure that, it's really important, and how to do it in a way that people feel like they're valued and can, without feeling put down just because they have a different opinion. It's the last thing I personally want in these kind of works. So yeah, kia ora. And that means, kia ora means hello, thank you, cheers, by the way, kia ora. Useful.
How do you say it? Go. How do you say it?
Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora. Yeah.
All the examples you've shown are in the good weather. Over here it's raining. How would you go overcome that sort of thing, or would you actually venture in?
That's a really good point. Maybe do it inside. That's a good point. I mean, the thing I did yesterday, I was going to do it rain or shine, but it was just me performing. And I was quite interested in what if it was raining. I would have put on a raincoat. I guess that's always a risk. I've not had to cancel my own work because of the weather, luckily. But like in sports games, sometimes you just have to and postpone them. And it depends on the context, but if weather did become an issue in designing it, then I'd have to take that into account. and maybe doing it in an art centre like this. I've done work in Denmark when it was raining, and I did it in an art centre like this with kids. It was a festival called Live Art for Bjorn, which means kids, and there was a project where we were two of us were on these kind of rolly boards. Thank you, kia ora. Kia ora. Thank you. The two of us were on these kind of rolly boards, and we could be pushed around by the kids for hours, and you never let the kids get too carried away with adults, but that's okay. They were fine. But it was inside, and so we weren't able to. You didn't work, get wet. So I guess it's just adjusting and everything. It rains a lot where I'm from too. It's a rainforest, so yeah.
I think you've got questions there.
Kia ora, Bach. I was wondering about, you said you've worked a lot with scientists.
Oh, you're from New Zealand?
I am, from half my life in Aotearoa and half of it in Hamari.
Wow.
So, nā mau, haere mai. I would like to know how you encourage scientists to work with artists. What would because I think that's how we get these really important messages across.
Yes, yep. So that's a really good question. I think in these projects that we work with, we frame them as art projects rather than science communication, so that it didn't look like the scientists just did their thing and some communicators interpreted them. And what we did is we'd get the scientists with the artists and get them to spend time with each other, like the artists in the labs with the scientists, and they'd share their reflections, and then vice versa, the scientists would go and hang out with the artists in their area of their kind of making spaces and whatnot, and then we get them together and they provide education sessions for each other. In this case, they were Māori artists, and so they had particular things that they'd been learning, that they knew, and the scientists had all their Western science knowledge. And sometimes we get intermediaries together, like Māori medicine, rongoa, specialists around forest health, with them as well. And so there'd be lots of mutual learning, and then we'd get them brainstorming together and stuff. And it just happened naturally, usually, which was great. The scientists back home were just really interested, and the artists were. It was just brilliant. They wanted to work together. And that was a crucial thing too.
So that was kind of my question. How do you start? How do you? Because once you've got the people together, you can chat, right?
Indeed,
it's all cool. But the beginning start, and particularly in academia, there's funding issues and all sorts.
Yeah. We had the privilege in this particular case that mobilising for action and Tuataia Whakatairanga, we had massive funding where we had scientists already working in projects, and we had social scientists in between like us, and Māori specialists in there, and we were able to the expectation in the whole research project was that we would work together somehow. So we were given time and money to actually spend together. I didn't take any money, but those who weren't paid were able to get paid for being there and things like that, and we were able to resource that. And so we had that privilege in a sense. So for me, it's often finding a particular thing, a particular topic, issue that everyone's interested in dealing with. Like it could be climate change, or I've seen it done with climate change a wee bit, but it could be that waterways health, and you get people together. You need to resource it. You just do somehow, and get them hanging out, get them socialising together, get them sharing food, and from my experience back home anyway, is you'd be surprised how quickly they can come together and start brainstorming. Sometimes scientists don't want to work with people, others, and some artists don't. They won't usually be in the room, and that's you can't force people to be there if they don't want to be. So I guess that's in our case we got people who wanted to be there, and we were lucky. We had some key science leaders that were very keen about this, and for us working with Māori culture was a thread through that as well. And there were some Māori scientists as well as also many non-Māori scientists that were keen on this. And maybe here, I can't tell you how to do it in Wales, but maybe that's a way through it, as Welsh culture, as it could be a thing. Or there's some kind of conduit in order to get these people together, to get working together, to get looking at solutions. And it's interesting because some of the art stuff you think, no good, doesn't do much, nice, pretty on the wall, that's it, fine. You can say that it may be about some science that sits in the journals and that's it. although I like to think it's all important, and it is, but sometimes it's like you might be able to facilitate ways of thinking about how can this have meaning for the local community? How could the local community be involved in this? You know, so sometimes maybe citizen science might be useful, and that did come into our work sometimes, our wider researchers, and sometimes not. Really depends. But there's different ways you can get conduits in to get those relationships of working together, I think. It's a really interesting one, and it really depends on the context of what it is and who it is and where they're at with that. Are they being forced to do it? Or how can you make it fun? Maybe if you get, I don't know, maybe you can, get them having lunch and hanging out and eating and socialising. I think it's really important from our experience. Yeah.
And so project set up, the structure was fundamentally set up.
That we had.
The design.
Yeah.
Set up really helped.
That's right.
In a way that they got to get right at the start.
Yeah.
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 Kia ora, te whakaoro.
Kia ora.
And last question.
Last question, Dwytha. Last question. We've been working with you for 3 weeks over, and I didn't really know you at all before. We got involved through Sarah.
Now you might remember that.
I'll never forget you. No, it's been an exhilarating and exciting and a pleasure to work with you for three weeks, and I'm hoping it'll carry on through the university. And there's lots of stuff, I think, that from lots of different directions that this is going to be relevant for the university and like communities locally here. The response from Bethesda community to support your work was amazing. That was really, I think, a signal of your enthusiasm and your ability to engage with people in a fun and creative and productive way. So I think a lot of this is around you and your uniqueness.
I was good, but they were better.
Yeah, I just want to say this because I don't say this very often as my people say to people, but I think that is something that, we've been very lucky to have you to come to us from your home. I'm just hoping, so this question is just asking, how do you do this and how do you avoid burnout? And how much of it do you think all of us could be doing in our different ways?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't expect everyone to do what,
So just some little ideas would be lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the privilege of having an academic job that's allowed me to do what I'm doing. So there's definitely privilege on that side. And I know if I wasn't in academia, I would be not very happy if I couldn't do this sort of thing. Not that I wouldn't be happy. I'd probably, I was a school teacher for a year, 2 years. I was happy doing that, but I couldn't do much of my practice. And so I wanted to move sideways. And so I did into this. As much as I love school teaching, it's good. So burnout is an interesting one, and not everyone can do stuff all the time. I used to make about 10 works a year, which is crazy. I haven't been doing that since COVID. COVID, I slowed down. I also slowed down where I was showing my work. It became much more about the community and the context through COVID, because I think it was a time where we were able to recalibrate where I was. And it was really a time of really trying to care about everyone else. For us back home, we had huge lockdowns, probably the biggest in the world, I think. And we were really supportive of it as a nation at first. So that, I don't make as much as I used to. So probably I did 2 performances, maybe 3 last year. I've done 2 this year, I think. And I've written, but I've also done academic writing, and I supervise and do other things. I used to just do work that was for art gallery contexts and things that didn't require quite so much preparation. I just go in there and do it, or I do a world tour, so to speak. And like what I did in my PhD, I was able to take that and just transfer it everywhere. And it was crazy enough that people appreciated it somehow. And stuff, and it's nothing like what I've got here. It was like old-fashioned, humorous, physical performance art. It was very physical, I guess that's also years of stuff that I'm showing you. The earliest stuff is from 2012 as well, what I've shown you. So I've been at it for about, since last century, since 1993, making things and showing things in and around my career. So yeah, looking after oneself is the first and foremost thing, and that you can't do any of this sort of thing without looking after yourself and doing stuff where you are, in my view, whatever we're doing, if we're trying to do stuff with communities and the arts, we need to work from where we're at as well, and that's also what I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to do things that I can't do. I usually know my limits and stuff, and I don't go out night clubbing anymore, so maybe that helps. Sorry to tell you. So yeah, but burnout is a big thing. It's a big thing for a lot of us, and especially being in academia and jobs that are high pressured as well, like that and others. So yeah, and to me, if we could have everyone working with communities really well supported, that would make a difference. They're having the financial privilege to be able to come here, that the University of Auckland has sponsored me to be here with, is amazing. I couldn't have done it otherwise, in that sense. So, yeah, word to the sponsor.
We couldn't have done it without the generosity of colleagues like Efion.
That's right. And you, and Ocean.
Helen and Marit from Plas.
From Pontiol,
Definitely.
and you for your patience.
I think we need to say another big round of applause for Mark. We've been talking for nearly an hour and a half now.
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thank you. Thank you.